Okay, just before I start the timer, I should warn you, this is actually a 25-minute talk, and I was about to trim it all down when Jeremy said, I bet you can't give it in 5 minutes, so here we go. Okay, when Zeppelins ruled the Earth. So this is poster for my favourite film ever, Zeppelin versus Pterodactyls. That is a Nazi Zeppelin. The film was never made. They made the poster, but the investors didn't get interested. This talk is not about the Hindenburg. There were 97 people on board, only 35 died, way better than the plane crash, not such a big deal. This talk was inspired by Airship Ventures. They're a Silicon Valley startup who bought a Zeppelin NT in Germany. That's their whole business model, is buy a Zeppelin, not sure what profit. This is the Zeppelin, actually that's Photoshop, but they actually got it to San Francisco just last weekend. There were lots of twitterings about it. Here it is over London. They flew it over London for the whole of August. Sort of en route to San Francisco. And in a touch of class, they flew it up to Cardington at the end of that month. Cardington, near Bedford, is where the British airship programme happened. And that's where those fabulous airship hangars. The airship hangars, this is the number 1 shed built 1915, looking a bit worse for wear these days. But the coolest thing about those hangars is that's where the idea of the Imperial airship scheme was born. In 1926, we decided we were going to fly airships between Blighty and all of our Imperial colonies. So we built 2 of them. We built the R100 and the R101, and these were majestic vehicles. Check this out. This is in the interior of the R101, like the full stateroom. They had the full viewing platform and the lounge and the little colonial wicker chairs. This is the smoking room. These are hydrogen airships, so you'll be very glad to know that the smoking room was lined with asbestos, just to make sure everything will be okay. So the R100 managed to make a round trip to Canada. The R101 set off for Calcutta in India and crashed in France, killing 48 people and tragically ending the whole idea of Imperial airships. So enough of that. Let's talk about a much more obvious use for Zeppelins, and of course that's Arctic exploration. This is the Norge, 1926. It's an Italian-built airship. It was a joint Italian-Norwegian project, and it was the first aircraft to fly over the polar ice cap between Europe and America. These are the guys behind it. Umberto Nobile is the Italian engineer. Roald Amundsen is the Norwegian Arctic explorer. They got together, they did this mission. Unfortunately, afterwards, Mussolini took all of the credit and they fell out. And sort of Italy and Norway fell out as well. This is one of the masts that they used up in Vadsø in northern Norway. You can still see that mast today. Even further north, this is in Svalbard. There's still a mooring mast used by the Norge. And so a couple of years later, the Italians decided to have another go without the Norwegians. They built the Italia, this thing, and unfortunately they crashed it straight into the North Pole. The envelope split, that's the big bit. The envelope split off with 6 people still on board, started floating away, and the people on board were throwing supplies down to the 9 survivors on the ice. And then, sort of classic, sort of fascist organisation, it took 49 days for the Italians to get their job together and do the rescue. And most tragically of all, the Amundsen, the Norwegian chap who'd fallen out, decided to let bygones be bygones, flew out there in a plane to help, and the plane was lost at sea. So this is incredibly tragic, but enough tragedy. Let's talk about the US Navy. So the US Navy had a really extensive airship program. This is the Shenandoah. It's the first airship that they built. And in 1923, it was the first airship to use helium. And it was huge, 680 feet long, 36 tons of pure awesome. You can see how many people they had on board. Now, the Shenandoah was torn apart in a squall in 1925. 14 died, but 29 survived, actually in different bits of it that broke off and floated down to air. So helium's a really good idea. This is the USS Akron flying over Manhattan. Another US airship. This one was awesome because it had planes on board. They had 5 biplanes inside the actual envelope. And of course, they launched them out of this T-shaped hole in the ground. Now, launching planes off an airship is really easy, but how do you get them back? Well, you have this hook thing. The plane matches its speed to the speed of the airship, and then the pilot leans out of his plane and hooks onto it manually, and then they hoik him back in through the T-shape. And they never screwed that up. Now, the Akron crashed at sea in a storm, killed 73 of the 76 men on board, and I think these are signatures of the 3 survivors. The Macon, Akron's sister ship, launched about a week after the Akron crashed. This is its control car. This is my favourite thing about the Macon. It had a spy bucket. This is a spy bucket. It's like a reverse periscope. You hide in the clouds and you lower a chap down in the spy bucket to look around and see what's going on. This is what's left of the Macon. She crashed at sea as well. But they had lifeboats on board this time, so only 2 out of the 76 people died, and it was their fault. One of them jumped out too early, and the other one swam back to get his stuff. So the last US airship, there's the USS Los Angeles. This was actually a proper Zeppelin. It was built in Germany, handed over as part of war reparations to the US. This is what happens when you moor your airship to a mast and it gets caught in a squall. There were people on board. It went up to sort of an 85-degree angle, but it was fine. It flew again the next day. Nobody was hurt. This is it moored to a mast ship. That's how you moored it. You'll notice there's actually an anchor hanging down the other end, which I think is kind of cool. And you'll be glad to know that this one never crashed. It was junked for scrap in 1939, I think. So this is Wikipedia's list of airships of the US Navy. You can see there were 6, 4 of them crashed, but that means 2 of them were all right. And in fact, Wikipedia also has a list of airship accidents. So it turns out airships, that's accidents of significant historic importance, and then that's minor accidents at the bottom. So they're not, it turns out the main problem with airships isn't hydrogen, because everyone uses helium, it's storms and weather and crashing into the sea and killing everyone. So let's quickly talk about the future. This is Aircraft. It weighs 400 tons. It's not actually lighter than air, but it's got like jets on the bottom that send it flying into the air. And apparently the first one's going to be complete in 2010. And if that one's too big for you, you can buy a sporty little executive number with an office, a library, a stateroom, and a sort of like conference-style layout. I would love to host a bar camp on one of these. Very quickly, mnemonic, this is how you spell Zeppelin. 2 P's, only 1 L. You remember because the L is what you moor the airship to. And these are my favourite airship blogs, so thank you very much.